at the Child Mind Institute, and I am looking forward to talking to you all today about how we can prep kids for online learning in the fall and to answer your questions about that. Right now we are live answering questions, so if you have anything that comes up, please don't hesitate to reach out and ask. You can type your questions into the comments. Those are going to get relayed to me, and I'm going to answer your questions as best as I can here on the spot. So we're going to talk about what the fall might look like for schools and for students, and what are some things that can be done in the meantime to help prep kids and parents for online learning if that does continue into the fall. And please don't hesitate to reach out with any questions. We'll go through your questions as they come through, and let's just dive right in. So, I think the first thing that seems to be on a lot of people's minds definitely right now is, will schools open this fall? And that question is still definitely up in the air. So officials are still having to decide how and when schools can safely reopen. Obviously, public health professionals have to follow the health and science that go into this decision-making process, and understanding that these decisions are going to likely vary by different geographic regions. So there's going to be some places that might be more apt to open schools up again and be able to do learning in person, whereas there are going to be schools in other places where there's still a need to do remote learning in the fall. And then there's going to be probably certain places where you see a combination of perhaps remote learning and in-person learning. So while there are a lot of different things being considered right now, there's also the possibility that there will be a second wave potentially this fall or winter, and that's what I believe a lot of public health professionals and educators are trying to keep in mind. There are CDC guidelines that have been released that are providing advice on best practices that should be evaluated before schools reopen, and it really comes down to each city and state making their own decision based on a lot of obviously different factors. And so, as I just mentioned, there are a few different options that seem to be on the table for schools right now. So one is that schools will reopen and schools will return to having full-sized in-person classes without much social distancing in effect. The other option that carries definitely less risk is that schools will reopen with a staggered schedule, meaning that students may be attending at different times with also small classes, activities, and events interspersed throughout the school day. There may be these rotating schedules in which some students come to school on certain days and log on remotely on other days. In this type of scenario, social distancing rules are closely adhered, and there's really no sharing of objects or materials too much, and students typically will just stay in one classroom throughout the school day to minimize contact with others. The next option, which carries even less of a risk, is just continuation of remote learning, and that being the case going forward for the fall and perhaps into the winter as well. So if it is the latter option, then you may be wondering, well, how do I prepare for this and how do I prepare my child for this? And that's what we're going to talk about this afternoon. Before we delve into that, though, I think there's a few important things that should also be kept in mind about the current situation. The first thing is that there are initiatives underway in certain places to try and make virtual learning more effective. So, for instance, New York State is partnering with the Gates Foundation to develop more effective virtual learning platforms, especially for English language learners and for students with disabilities who may be at greatest risk for falling behind due to the coronavirus right now. It's also possible that given all the above scenarios that virtual learning is not an all-day experience or not all day every day. There may be some places where it's a combination of remote and in-person learning, and so it may look a little bit different than how things were looking in the spring. And the third thing is that schools are going to try and do their best to adapt and learn from things that happened during the spring to see what worked and what didn't work, and then hopefully school districts can take that into account in terms of improving their programming moving forward. So I think it's just important to keep those contextual factors in mind, and realizing that while we got a sample and we got a taste of what virtual learning was like during the spring, things may look a little bit different in the fall as things progress and move forward. The other thing that I want to highlight before we delve into questions and get into how to talk to your kids about continuing with remote learning is I just want to share some tips and suggestions about how you can talk to your kids really about any sort of difficult subject, or a subject that may still feel uncertain or have some ambiguity and that you may not have all the answers about as parents. So there's really a few important key principles that I think should be kept in mind. One is that trying to provide a space where you can welcome your child's questions is super important. So you may get a variety of questions from your children. Some may be very serious and others may seem kind of silly to you. Regardless, you should really try and encourage your children to ask whatever question they have and to take it seriously, because it is obviously something that's been on their mind and that they're thinking about. And really, you want to convey the tone and the attitude that your child is being heard and that they can get fact-based information from you as their parent. The second key principle I think is important to keep in mind is when you can't answer a question because you don't know, and there's definitely a lot of uncertainty about this virtual learning and how schools will look in the fall, it's okay to say, I don't know. It's really something we want to focus on is teaching kids to tolerate some degree of uncertainty so that they can help build resilience in the future. The third principle to keep in mind is you don't want to volunteer too much information because it may become overwhelming for some kids. So really, the thing that you should try and stick to, if possible, as much as you can, is trying to answer their questions honestly and clearly, and remembering it's totally fine if you can't answer everything. There's no way that you're going to have all the answers for what's going to happen. And I think it's okay to give yourself a break as parents in recognizing it's all right, I don't know everything, and it's okay to let your children know that you don't know or have all the answers, but that you'll get the information to them once you know more. And then finally, really trying to provide reassurance that you're going to continue to be there to support them and help them through this process, and encouraging the conversation to keep going and let them know that lines of communication are open and should continue to stay open. So again, emphasizing that you may not have all the answers, but you're going to continue to talk to them and answer their questions once you know more is super important, I think. So those are just some key principles to keep in mind when you are talking to your children about things that may not be certain or some tough subjects. So I'm going to take a broadcast kind of break at the moment just to reintroduce myself and give you guys some more information about our website. So my name is Dr. Matthew Pogorski. I'm a clinical neuropsychologist here in the Learning and Development Center at the Child Mind Institute, and I'm on here this afternoon answering your questions about how to prep your kids and how to prep yourself for the potential of online and virtual learning continuing in the fall. I do want to encourage you to visit our website, childmind.org. We have a number of different telehealth resources that are available right now. In my role as a clinical neuropsychologist at the Child Mind Institute, one of the things that I've been involved in, which has been a pleasure and a privilege, is developing this remote assessment and remote neuropsychological assessment for children and families who really need that information right now and need to better understand how to continue to support their child's learning when it does, as things move forward and school does come back in the fall, in whichever format it does. So we do have remote neuropsychological evaluations that we are able to do right now. If you're interested, please visit our website, childmind.org/telehealth. There is information on that website about what remote neuropsychological testing looks like, and also the array of other clinical telehealth services that we are offering right now. The Child Mind Institute is borderless, meaning that we can provide services and supports across the country and even internationally in some cases. So if you're a family that's outside of our location in New York City, you can still access the tremendous amount of services that we're offering. Please visit that website, childmind.org/telehealth, to find out some more information. So our first question this afternoon comes from Maria. Maria, thank you so much for tuning in this afternoon to our Facebook Live and for coming up with your question. So Maria's question for everyone who's viewing out there is, how do we prepare anxious kids for the transition to kindergarten without knowing much of what to expect? Any tips or particular to those big changes? Yeah, so that's a great question. I think, as I was just talking about, one of the things that we want to do when we're discussing topics that seem uncertain is to be upfront with children that you may not have all the answers. You do want to provide as much fact-based information as possible. You want to provide reassurance that you are going to continue to help them through this process and to prepare them as much as possible. For kids that have anxiety already and the uncertainty may be heightening that anxiety in some ways, you want to also try and set the emotional tone and allow them to understand that tolerating some degree of uncertainty is okay, because that helps build resilience. And for a kindergartner, that may be a tough concept to explain, and you may not want to explain it like that. But I think as parents, just knowing that you can set the emotional tone and that not knowing sometimes is actually okay, and uncertainty is okay to have, that actually even youngsters will pick up on that because they model their parents' behaviors. And so really trying to set the emotional tone that it's okay if you don't know everything. There is going to be some uncertainty, but you're going to problem solve. You're going to work through them. You're going to try and get information, and that things are going to be okay, I think, are just some general things to help prepare kids who might be anxious about returning to school and also may not know what that will look like. I think for kindergartners and little ones, especially, they are at a point in their development where, there's a lot of changes happening for them, and they need their parents' guidance and support, and they need to be able to have structure and routines throughout the day to make sure that they are engaging in positive social interactions. And obviously that can be challenging right now, but trying to set up good social interactions while maintaining social distancing guidelines is super important. Trying to keep them engaged and keeping a structure during the day where you can continue to teach them things and help them learn and provide activities and fun things. Those are also things that you can help to steer their development in the right direction and keep on moving in a positive and upward trajectory. So I'm going to throw to commercial, as we say, for a little bit, and also reintroduce myself. My name is Dr. Matthew Gursky. I'm a clinical neuropsychologist here at the Child Mind Institute, and I want to let you guys know again, we have a tremendous amount of telehealth resources available through the Child Mind Institute. We are providing clinical services remotely at this time. We have neuropsychological evaluations that we're able to conduct remotely from home, which is great. We also are providing a number of different telehealth clinical services outside of New York. So if you're a family and you're interested in trying to get some clinical services for your child, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. You can visit our website, childmind.org/telehealth, to get some more information. I want to dip into our mailbag a little bit as well and answer some questions that we've received about this topic, about returning to remote learning potentially in the fall as well, and what that will look like. So we got a question in our mailbag from one of our viewers, and the question was this: my whole family, us parents included, found remote learning overwhelming and frustrating. I don't know how to get my kids excited for something none of us found value in. What can I do to help everyone feel better about what's coming this fall? So that was a question from our mailbag. And again, it was from parents who have found the remote learning experience really overwhelming and frustrating, and they want some information and some answers about how they can help getting their kids prepared for what's coming in the fall. So for me, I think some of the things that may have been helpful during the spring as a family that you found helpful, you should try and continue to adhere to those things in the fall. So whether you found that whether it's breaking up the day while interspersing some fun activities, trying to go outside if possible, providing reinforcement, and that could be through positive praise and verbal messages for their moments of engagement, doing work in short bursts, speaking to teachers, all of those different things that you may have found that were helpful in the spring. Those are things that you want to keep in mind going into the fall as well, because if they work then you want to continue to use those things in the fall. I think the other thing that, as I mentioned before, is that you as parents are setting the tone, and you have the capacity and control to set the tone of what your household will also look like and how you will respond to the things that are happening right now. So if you continue to get frustrated over this remote learning experience, if you continue to seem overwhelmed to your child is going to follow along with that. They're going to pick up on those things. And I'm not blaming, and I'm not trying to say you did anything wrong. Those are natural reactions to have to a experience that's less than optimal in remote learning. What I want to get across, though, is that it's important to keep in mind that you have the capacity to set the tone in your household and set the tone for your children. So you can choose to actually set a tone that incorporates elements of problem solving and resilience and the challenges that come along. And guess what? Your child's going to look to you to see how they should respond and how they should act when things get tough. So if you set the emotional tone of, hey, this is frustrating, this is tough right now, I totally get it. This is not easy for us as a family, but guess what? We're going to work together. We're going to stick together. We're going to problem solve this. We're going to get through this as a family. We're going to work through this really difficult time, and we're not going to give up. We're not going to continue to get frustrated and overwhelmed all the time. We're going to figure out how to overcome this obstacle together. Those are the messages that you control as a parent, and you can continue to emphasize those. And that's, I think, something really important to keep in mind. So I think that's just something important as we move forward. So we are also actually going to go to instead of me giving the commercial, we're going to go to an actual commercial break. It's a short video, and I think my face appears once or twice in there, so you might see me pop up again. So we're just going to take a 30-second break, and then we'll be right back to answer some more of your questions.
The Child Mind Institute is a national leader in children's mental health and learning disorders. In the face of the coronavirus pandemic, we are here to support all families. Whether you need help with remote learning, stress management techniques, or support for children who are in distress, the Child Mind Institute is available to help your family cope during this challenging time. We're here for you wherever you are. To request an appointment, visit childmind.org/telehealth.
All right, welcome back. So as you saw in the commercial, we are providing telehealth services, both neuropsych evaluations and clinical therapeutic services, and we are borderless right now. Please, if you have any questions or you think that your child needs support for their mental health right now, please check out our website, childmind.org/telehealth, and you can provide some contact information, and we'd be happy to reach out to you. So we're going to dive right back into taking some more questions in the meantime from our mailbag. And again, if you do have questions, you can just leave them in the comments right here. I'm live right now, so I'm answering your questions. If you have something you want to ask, you can just leave it in the comments and I'll try and get to it. Oh, perfect timing. So this question is from, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. My apologies if I'm not, Aisling. So your question is, should they repeat the grade? They will have missed 6 months of school by September in Ireland. Yeah, so that's a difficult thing, I think. It'd be helpful to have a little bit more context, or if there's something that I can answer, that would be super. I think just to speak off of the comment, though, it is what we're recognizing, and I think what we're coming to realize is that a lot of kids are going to have gaps in their learning due to this suboptimal learning experience of virtual learning. And the challenges that have taken place globally, and we are still trying to figure those out. But there are certainly going to be gaps in children's learning that we as educators and psychologists and professionals need to think about how we're going to handle those things effectively moving forward. And to be honest, we just don't have the answer yet. And I think we're still trying to figure that out. Aisling, I'm reading your question again, and maybe I misinterpreted or misunderstood. If you're asking, should they repeat the grade, I think what we know in general about grade retention, and it obviously depends on, we have not done virtual learning. Okay. Yeah, so, I think it depends on every child's situation. In general, though, what I'll share with you, sort of my knowledge of the literature and what we know about remote learning, grade retention and holding kids back, is that in general, grade retention is not always the answer. And we find that in general, grade retention can be harmful, especially for kids that have learning challenges, who have not gotten the right kind of intervention to make up for their learning challenges. I think if you have a child that's missed a lot of school already, then due to various circumstances, then repeating the grade may actually be helpful because of the fact that they need reintroduction to the instruction. If they get pushed ahead and they haven't learned things, they may feel like they're falling behind their peers and they may not be able to keep up with the type of instruction that's happening in the classroom or virtually, and they may start to feel demoralized, or they may start to feel like they may internalize some negative messages about their own abilities. So I think the general message that I want to get across is that in general, grade retention is not the answer, and it's not an intervention for kids that have learning difficulties. But if a kid has missed a significant amount of instruction due to various circumstances in their life, then it may be helpful to consider grade retention so that they can be taught the concepts that they missed out on. So I hope I answered your question effectively. If I haven't, then please feel free to provide some more info in the comments, and I'll try to follow up with a more concise and clear answer directly to you, but I hope that was helpful. So we're going to wrap it up right now. We only have a few minutes left. So I just want to, again, let everybody know that first, it's been a pleasure being able to speak to you all this afternoon and to answer your questions about how we can provide an effective learning experience for kids in the fall, and to start thinking about this process. I think that this is not the end of this discussion. Obviously, this is just the beginning. There's going to be many more discussions that we need to have as professionals, with parents, amongst ourselves, and with educators to really figure out what is the best way that we can return to a safe and successful learning environment for kids so that they can continue to move forward and progress and not fall further behind. And so this is one of, I think, many conversations and discussions that we'll be having as a community, and communities across the country and across the world will be having as they continue to grapple also with the health and science aspect of what's happening with the coronavirus. I'm just going to give one more plug in the meantime also for our telehealth services that we're offering. Again, we are borderless right now. The Child Mind Institute is able to provide neuropsychological evaluations and telehealth therapy, clinical services, therapeutic services to children and families across the country and internationally in some places as well. So please don't hesitate to reach out. It was an absolute pleasure getting to be on this afternoon and speak to you all. And I look forward to being able to answer more of your questions in future discussions and in future social media opportunities like this one. So thank you again for joining us this afternoon. Please leave any additional comments or feedback in the comment section, and we will get to those and provide some more links and resources that you can access moving forward. Thank you so much.